I've heard a lot of people say that this game has clunky, messy, and janky every timing. Well, today we're going to uncover the truth. We're going to see if those people were onto something or if potentially they have the syndrome of the skill issue, meaning those people suck. But before we start, I would appreciate it if you were to drop a like on this video. Rumor has it that if you like this video, you're going to have a good day tomorrow. So you know what to do. Anyway, the parry system in this game has been subject to a lot of discussion. People are saying it's inconsistent, people are saying it's just badly designed. But in my opinion, there is more to the story than just jankiness, messiness, and clunkiness. So, first of all, my issue with this game, and are the same issue with Wolong as well, is that you have two different weapons, which could have been just one button to parry and one button to block. But because they were trying to be different, now you have to press two different buttons, which means that instead of one finger doing something else, you still have to block, potentially, and also perform a counterspark, because in this game they call it counterspark. If you want to counterspark, you need to press triangle. I think this is unnecessary. The same button you used to block would have been used to parry. But here we go, I guess. Now, in this game, you have multiple weapons. You have odachis, you have katanas, you have the octave blade, which is my personal favorite. You have great swords, you have pole arms, you have also dual swords, and yeah, you have a lot of weapons. You might be wondering, where am I going with this? Why is this relevant to the question? Are the countersparks janky? Well, here's the thing. I think in an attempt to make every single weapon different, they also chose to change the way you would perform a counterspark. Let me explain. Whenever you're using, for example, the octave blade, you're going to notice that there's a lot of momentum. And that's the case for almost every single weapon. Whenever you perform a counterspark, there is a lot of forward momentum. You are pushed forward. Now, that's not the case for every single game. I'm going to try to think about, let's say, Sifu, Sekiro, for example, which in my opinion are quite similar. Sifu and Sekiro are quite similar, and they also have basically almost the same parry system. So basically, you have one weapon to parry, and you're going to notice that when it comes to either Sifu or Sekiro, whenever you perform a parry, you don't move. You are going to stay where you are. That's very important because it adds up to the consistency. If you know that you're not going to move forward, it makes it easier to know when exactly you want to parry, because it's going to mostly be whenever the attack is about to connect. That's when you're going to most likely perform the parry. But when it comes to Rise of the Ronin, because like I said, you have multiple weapons. You have over 7 or 8 weapons, excluding unarmed combat, because that's also the parry timing is also different where you're not using a weapon. So you have over 8 weapons, but also don't forget combat styles. And those combat styles, most of the time, they're going to also have different countersparking animations. Let's take, even if we just limit ourselves to the katana, you have over 10 combat styles and they all have different animations, like I said. But it's deeper than that. When I use, for example, some stances with a lot of momentum, like forward momentum, it means that whenever the enemy is about to attack, if I want to parry with a stance, with a combat style with a lot of momentum, forward momentum, I'm going to need to catch the attack halfway as opposed to waiting for the attack to connect with me. And I noticed that, and at first I didn't pay attention to that. I kept thinking maybe I was just tripping, but then it just hit.
And I realized, well, I'm just pressing the button earlier, but I'm still able to perform the counterspark. If you want to make this experiment yourself, let's say you use the Neo Ryu combat style with the katana, and you're going to notice that the parry is very similar to the parry you will have in Sekiro or Sifu, because you don't move forward and you might move slightly backward, but it's almost insignificant. You're going to notice that this parry, I mean this counter spark animation, is very consistent, because again, you're going to wait for the moment the enemy is about to strike to parry, which is what you've been used to do in every other game which has a similar parry system. Now, every time you switch a weapon and you switch a combat style, you're going to notice that there's a slight delay when it comes to when exactly you should perform the parry. I wouldn't say that it is janky. I wouldn't say that it's messy. I think that inconsistency is the result of the devs wanting to differentiate the different combat styles and weapons. I think that's fair. But the way it translates in the game, it's almost, I'll say the right term is convoluted. It's very complex. And when you understand that whenever you switch a weapon or a stance, and I need to start calling them stances, but hey, when you switch combat styles, you should also, I'll say, remap your brain and understand that maybe you need to press the button earlier or later. And sometimes even when you press the button, it just doesn't affect the animation, like the forward momentum only. Sometimes even the key consumption is different from one combat style to the other. I feel like that's a lot of variables. That's a lot of parameters you need to keep in mind. And that's probably why people feel like this is janky. And I can understand why. It's not a skill issue, you know, because to a certain degree, well, they are right. That's too many things to keep in mind. But at the same time, I want to say, is it a bad design? Maybe. Does it work? Yes, because if you spend time with the game, if you actually go to the dojo and you try to just memorize every single enemy pattern, I can guarantee you're going to improve when it comes to predicting when exactly it is you need to press the button, regardless of the weapon you're using. You're still going to have some issues because sometimes that forward momentum can carry you all the way behind the enemy. See, you want to perform a parry, and because you press the button too soon, now you are like 3 or 4 feet away from the enemy. I feel like this is a problem. I feel like there needs to be some kind of consistency when it comes to those parry animations. And I'm not even talking, I didn't even mention the fact that you can parry in the air. Whenever you jump, you can perform a parry. And whenever you try to do that with the oxtail blade, you're going to notice that you go so far. It's incredible. Like, you go so far. And even if I compare it to, let's say, Sekiro, because you can also perform parries while jumping in Sekiro, you don't move. There is no forward or backward momentum. You just stay wherever you were when you were trying to perform the animation. That's great. Again, it adds up to the consistency. It makes it easier to know when exactly you want to parry the attack. Even in Sifu or Sekiro, you can mash. You can mash the block button, which is also the parry button, and you're going to move forward or backward. In Rise of the Ronin, that's not the case. Everything is different from one weapon to the next, and I think that's why people are confused. Are they right to be confused? I think so. I think they are right. And I want you to try to play again with the Neo Ryu stance. You're going to notice that it's way easier to perform parries. But even when you perform a parry, you're going to notice that the way the enemy is going to behave post-parry is different depending on the combat style you're using. Again, that's way too many things to keep in mind. Again, I understand what they were going for, and I think it's salutable. It's respectable. But at the same time, that's way too many things to keep in mind. Way too many weapons, way too many animations, way too many combat styles. And maybe they could have made it so that all the katanas have one animation, one parry animation, and that's it. I think that would have been a better call, but then we wouldn't have much difference between the different countersparks. And even keep in mind that even some countersparks have like a double type of animation. You perform one counterspark and then another one, which means that if you commit to to pressing the counterspark button and you miss, the penalty is bigger than if you were using the Neo Ryu stance. And yeah, so those people are not technically bad at the game, and it's very I feel like we need to find a middle ground. It could have been better, but at the same time, the more you play the game, the more used to the system you become. But does that mean that we should blame the system or blame the players? I think I'm going to let you answer that question. Should we blame the system or should we blame the players for not getting used to the system, even if it's kind of convoluted?